Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 2, season 2 of The Big Life. Jordyn, we're back. We had our debut. The world knows, I should say, like, welcome in. I know very little Swedish. So we're doing great. Jordyn, how are you today?
I'm great. I'm doing good, Sam. Any day here recording with you is a great day. We
You
had
get
an amazing
to
guest on.
it's simple. You get to be with me. Who wouldn't want that?
Uh-oh. I may have inflated your ego too much. We need some humbling. We had an amazing guest on, an incredible episode. I am so happy with how it turned out. We got real honest answers, which I think is what everyone wants to hear because you get such, polished version most of the time. And we finally got I feel like real honest conversation. So
No, I agree. I mean, I know I'm so guilty of the media answer, and it's things you have to do sometimes. Like, let's be honest, there is a time and a place for a media answer in certain situations. And I'm so thankful for Maya Antoine, our amazing guest, to sit down with us and give us the real. And she even acknowledges, she's like, shoot, should I give you the real answer or the real answer? And so her being willing to sit down and have that conversation, like I said, I think she might be on that edge of maybe being sick around of being with me all the time, but she's my fellow North American here in Sweden and she's required to. So I'll take it as I can get it.
awesome, awesome. Yeah. So Sam, we talked a lot about your transition to here in last episode. What's last week looked like for you? How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I actually scored my first professional goal last weekend. So we'll take that as a win. Who would have thought Sam Carey scoring goals? So we had our final preseason match last weekend, and I'm super excited for this week. This weekend is officially my first pro soccer game. We've been in preseason, so I don't know if I really count those. Like, you don't really count spring games and all that stuff. So, first conference professional soccer game this weekend. We square off against BK Haken. Haken just was in the quarterfinals of the Champions League and lost to PSG. So, an extremely good club. They won the league last year. They're extremely talented. I found out I'll be marking a forward who was on the Swedish or is on and is a frequent on the Swedish national team. So huge challenge ahead for me, but I am going to be getting my first official professional start and an opportunity to play in the game. So I'm so grateful for it. I'm excited for it. So when this episode drops, it'll be over. So let's just hope it goes well.
Oh my God, that is so incredible. Oh, that's so exciting. You guys already have starting lineups all set as you go into the game.
We really talked about it today since we're recording this on Thursday. The game's on Saturday. So we have, one more day before like that real pregame. But in our practice today, we're going over our attack, how we're breaking things down, how we're going to look. So with that, it's like mostly the starting lineup. And then you have the team that was like basically the scout team. So it's pretty clear. We've had the same starting lineup for a while now. So yeah, I'm extremely excited. And so crazy, crazy time, but it'll definitely also be a moment to celebrate and to say we finally made it as a starting professional soccer player.
Oh my God, that is so incredible.
Thanks. So I'm giddy. How are you? How's this week ahead been for you? How's the knee brace?
The knee brace, it's still straight. So it has been 4 weeks since injury now. Still have yet to bend my knee. I'm meeting with the surgeon later today, who hopefully will tell me I can bend my knee at the very least. I had been measured for a new knee brace that I can be more dynamic in and hopefully play in as soon as it comes in here and start to get that rehab and process going here. But for right now, not much has changed. Can't bend my knee. So I'm hoping my birthday is Sunday. So fingers crossed, best birthday gift I could ask for is just him telling me that it's all good and I can take this stupid thing off and at least bend my knee and drive. That's all I want to do is drive myself. But yeah, so we'll talk a little bit in the post interview, I think more in depth about the injury and things like that. We got a bunch of questions in, and a lot of them had to do with how you deal with injury. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. But as a team update, we're still in Spring Cup. We have our last game here this Saturday in Grand Park. So Indiana, and then we will be done. Spring season's over. It's coming to an end here super quick. So it's really, really just a weird time, as you kind of ramp up and soccer's ending, but you still have 2 weeks left of school here. You're looking at finals and all that stuff. But yeah, I think the team's excited, have one last game together, and then, we'll finish it out.
Sounds good. Well, hopefully this interview brings you a little bit of joy. I know it made me laugh a good amount of times, and we hope it does for you as well. And everyone, please welcome the amazing Maya Antoine. But first, before we get to our interview, I want to tell you guys about our amazing sponsor, Unilink. As you all know, I am loving my time in Europe playing soccer, and I am so excited to tell you about a program that I learned about at the United Soccer Coaches Convention. If you're in college and playing, and you want to keep a foot in the game after you graduate, listen up. Unilink Soccer has opportunities all over the UK for players who want to keep playing after they graduate college. For example, let's just say you want to continue your mechanical engineering degree like Jordyn. Unilink may have a place at a university in Manchester or London to continue doing that and continue to play. There are all sorts of amazing opportunities to advance your education, steep yourself in another culture, and continue to play soccer on a competitive and satisfying level. Unilink's university partners are located all over the United Kingdom as well. Go ahead and visit unilinksports.com/soccer/GSN and discover a world and a future while continuing to do all of our favorite thing, play soccer. Unilink is truly a really unique and amazing platform, and I'm so happy for them for being a sponsor of our podcast. All right, now back to the interview. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And we have a very special guest, someone who I feel like is almost attached to my side by need and by force instead of by actual circumstance. My built-in roomie now on the road and my fellow English speaker in Sweden, Maya Antoine. Thank you for coming on the pod.
Thank you for inviting me.
I know,
It's great
quite
to be here.
Quite the introduction right there. So, a little bit of background about who this lovely person sitting in person next to me is. I feel like this is like very rare in-person guest. Maya came to North Shipping about a week after me, and we've kind of been thrown into this ringer of figuring out playing and living in Sweden together. She's a really unique journey and something that I think is going to be really interesting for our listeners to hear. So we're so thankful for you.
Thank you.
Okay, first things off the bat, we claim that you're like a North American because you're not from America, but everyone kind of just assumes you are because obviously you played in the States, but you're from Canada. I think a lot of American people are extremely confused about the fact that our youth system is very weird compared to the rest of the world. So can you explain a bit about like what is youth soccer in Canada like?
Youth soccer in Canada is, well, more specifically Ontario, has changed a lot over the years. When I was playing, you basically had your house league teams when you're really, really young, and then you had rep where you're representing a club. And then from then on, we had regionals for a short period of time, which was when you got invited into like training sessions in between your regular club training sessions. So let's say you trained with your club like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you train with regionals like Tuesday and Thursdays. And then each region in Ontario would compete and we'd get to play against each other and it'd be this huge thing. So I got to learn got to meet a lot of people that way. So basically, when you say Canadians basically know all Canadians, yes and no. In terms of strictly soccer speaking, yes. But because of that, we got a lot of development, especially with different coaches. But what ended up happening is that they disbanded the regional program. I think my age group was the final age group for that happening. And they brought in this new league called the OPDL, which is the Ontario Player Development League. And that kind of ended up becoming more of what you guys have in the US, which is more of a pay to play type thing. So it's more or less, if you have the funding, then you can play in the quote unquote elite level that the province can offer you. On top of that, Ontario and Quebec, I think Saskatchewan also has one, out east in Nova Scotia and British Columbia. I think Alberta also has one. There's these development centers specifically geared to the Canadian women's national team, like developing the younger groups. So each of those provinces that I listed have their own development center, and all of them are run completely differently based on who's working it. But I ended up joining I was a part of the Ontario Rex program. That's what it's called. And I went out to BC and lived a year out in BC and was in their Whitecaps Rex program as well. So very much so, very different. But I'd say there's a lot more focus on if you can't afford to pay to play, like there's other leagues that you can play that are just equally as competitive, but it's not forcing you into this, you have to pay to play. Like a lot of parents were fighting back against the OPDL system and found other leagues and went to other clubs so that you could get the proper training and competitive environment that kids wanted and needed. So, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds honestly a lot like our ODP sys, but a lot more organized for your entire experience, which is really interesting because that's way different than the way things are here. It's strictly pay to play. You do high school, club, maybe you play all year round in an academy, but that's really it. You'll have like our ODP system, at least in Ohio, is like non-existent. So there's really just high school, club, and then you go to showcases, whatever, and then you go to college. Like that's pretty much the laid out path for you.
I'd say like what I also thought was interesting, like moving from Canada to the States, is how much like how glorified high school soccer is.
That was my next question
And
for
I
you.
get, like that makes no sense because for us, high school soccer is ass.
So what is the alternative? Like a lot of girls get trapped playing high school, myself included, because at the time there was no alternative to play high school. So what is like the setup for like how do you continue? Like what's that partnership with your club and your school like?
I mean, there is no partnership there.
Okay.
Like if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Honestly, it depends who you ask here, because a lot of the academy girls feel that way, where they're just like high school sucks, and they'll go and they'll just play with their club team year round. And you're getting, I think, more of that, where you're starting to be more specialized in soccer and play at these higher levels and kind of just bypass high school altogether. However, I am one of the few girls who like all I ever wanted to do was play high school soccer. Like that was the end all be all for me. So like I loved it, and I just can't understand not playing for it. Like that's your school. Of course I want to like play high school soccer.
But you guys also have this not weird, the American connection to your school. Like that's like a loyalty thing.
Yeah.
Like there's no school spirit in terms like for Canadian schools. Like there is no school spirit for athletics geared to your Canadian school. Like that's just not a thing. Like in any high school, it doesn't matter how good your team is. There is no homecoming. There is not like there was a homecoming, but like that's just not it. Like the way that you guys go all out, that's not a thing in Canada, like at all whatsoever.
The more and more like I've learned and talked to like girls over here about like life, I feel like one of the first questions I got asked when I moved to Sweden was a girl like pulled me aside. She goes, "So did you go to prom?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Oh, I saw that in Vampire Diaries." And like that shook me. Like I was like, "Oh my God, that is such a uniquely American thing." Like it's so interesting when you kind of pull yourself back for a little bit about what you're used to.
Yeah. No.
I guess that is an American thing. I thought everyone went to prom. MJ went to prom. I know that.
Yeah, no. We have prom in Canada. Yeah, that's very much so a thing. I say it's North American. Like,
so transferring over in your soccer career, you play college soccer in the States. Was that always something you saw yourself doing? Like, what is that kind of pathway of growing up in Canada to then going to college in the States?
I'm a bad person to ask, especially as a Canadian, because I'd say for most people who play in Canada and want to get it's a means to an end. So they want to get a scholarship so that they can get their degree paid for in the U.S. And then that's about it. I never saw myself even going to the States to go get it. Like that wasn't that's not what I was thinking of. I just wanted to play.
Okay.
But I got introduced into the Canadian women's national team, the youth program very early. And because of that, that obviously opened up my options a lot faster and definitely easier than most people, I'd say. So while a lot of my friends on my club team had gone to showcases, like they went to Surf's Cup or whatever the heck the one is in Florida, and went to a bunch of different ones. Like I didn't get to do that because I was training with U17 national team. And because of that, my recruitment process / looking at schools was really, really different. Mainly because I don't know shit about the U.S. Like
Yeah.
the only schools that I really know of were Ivy League schools, and then other schools that I knew that older players had gone to and attended.
Yeah.
So those are the only ones that I could be like, yeah, like maybe what about these ones? So it's like one of the first schools that I was looking at was West Virginia, because at that point in time they had two Canadian national team players, Keisha Buchanan and Ashley Lawrence.
Mm.
And even she was in and out of the pool. Riley Foster, she's actually playing pro in Australia now. But those are the players that I knew. And I'm like, okay, so like if this is a like environment that they're getting good at, maybe let's check it out. And I went there and then I was like, I can't live like this. I was like, really sorry. I really cannot live in the middle of nowhere where the school is the city and that is it. Couldn't do that. But yeah, my process moving from high school to university was more coaches reaching out to me versus me reaching out to coaches. I think the only coach that I really reached out to was not Michigan State, sorry. And that's mainly because my friend was also going there. And then they replied back to me like way too late and was offering me half a scholarship. And I was like, I'm not going to go spend money in the States when I could spend that and the same amount of money and get a doctorate in Canada. Like, not necessary. So, yeah.
No, it makes sense. So what was like the process for you being a Canadian, narrowing down these schools and like ultimately deciding on Vanderbilt? How did that kind of come about?
I want to say it really came from a lack of general knowledge because there's so many schools out there and I had no idea, like absolutely no clue. And knowing what conferences to be in, like wasn't really sure. Like I knew the Big Ten, I heard of the Pac-12, kind of heard of the SEC, which is weird because I ended up in the SEC. But it basically ended up coming out down to I'm here for 4 years. I need a degree that's going to do something for me. And then can I enter a program that's where, let's say, I'm not necessarily competing against, like trying to be the star, like still fighting for a position on the field, but not enough where I'm like just going to get benched the whole time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what led me to Vanderbilt. Basically, I'd say very much so on the academics. That was the main seller. There's the logo. Basically, the slogan for Vandy is the SEC, the city, the degree, and that's what keeps everybody there. Those three things keeps everybody there. Like it doesn't matter what sport you play for, and if you end up like not playing at all, like those three things like handcuff you, and you're like, you know what? I'm gonna wait it out. Like it's a great school, it's a great city, and it's a great conference. Everything outside of that might impact that's what makes you question your life. But those three things for sure.
So this podcast originated a college soccer podcast. It's been expanded to the bigger life now that I am no longer a college athlete.
Nice.
Looking back on your college career though, like what do you think your biggest takeaways after your 5 years of Vandy? Like what do you walk away like feeling you learned or growed, or like what are the main moments for you?
Main moments definitely was, COVID year. That was a huge moment. Not just because like everything basically was thrown out the window. Our team was really going through it, and we somehow managed to gel at the very, very end of the season and was like, you know what? This year was completely crap, but it's going to be okay because we're just going to go out here and have fun. And we did, and we balled out, and we won the SEC tournament and beat Arkansas for the 5th time in a row in the finals.
Blacks.
I told Sam about the curse that they had. But it was a great moment, I'd say, for everyone, especially because we didn't think we are going to make it that far at that point in time because of how poorly we played during the season. But it was great to see everyone come together and really just say, we're going to do this together. Like, we made it this far. We can't go home with a loss. Like, this is it. So that was a fantastic experience. Senior year was a great year, mainly because our team was gelling really well. And I think that was the first year I was selected to be captain by my team, which I hated, by the way. I didn't want to be captain.
Really?
No, I hated it because I knew there were other people on my team. I was like, they have so much better qualities than I do as a captain, as a true captain. And I guess from that, like, I took that growth to be more, I want to say, like, confrontational and fight for more for my teammates. Like, if someone's having a really hard time, I'd either let my coaches know that, hey, like, you need to back off on this person, like, that they're not responding well. Like, can you do something else? So that was, I'd say, growth personally from that, because it was a ride that time period. But I'd say college athletics as a whole teaches you a lot about yourself. Living with other people that you don't know teaches you a lot about yourself, especially when you're in rooms that are way too small.
So that all being said, now here we are, somehow across the world. Did you always have playing professional in your plan? Or at what point in your career were you like, yeah, I do want to be a professional soccer player?
Playing with the youth national team impacted my scope, I would say, a lot. And I'd say after the U17 World Cup in 2018 in Uruguay, that was the basically point in time where I was like, yeah, like, I'm going to go pro. Basically, everyone on that team had the same idea that we all wanted to go play pro. Where that ended up actually coming true post college was an entirely different story. But from that point in time, I was like, yeah, I do want to do this for the rest of as long as I can, the rest of my life. I wish, but yeah, I do want to do this for as long as I can, because why not? And I would heard from other, like, older players who had played in Hungary, who played in China, who played, like, all over the world. And I'm like, that's really cool. You get to do what you love and you get to travel while you're at it. Like, what more could you ask for?
Yeah. So how did you get to Sweden? How did that happen? Because I saw you had entered NWSL draft.
Yeah.
And then now you're in Sweden speaking English with only Sam Carey. Are you guys the only two there that speak English, or how does that work?
That speak only English, yes.
Yeah, we're the only two. We have 3 internationals on the team right now. There's one more coming, but the other one's Norwegian, so she
doesn't count.
She doesn't count. She's basically
not helpful.
No, it's just us two.
Yeah. No. Long story short, everything happened extraordinarily quickly. Because I didn't get drafted, and I kind of knew I wasn't going to get drafted as an international, I kind of was planning to be spending this time at Vandy, actually. I was not expecting to be here in Sweden. But, stuff happens.
Sorry to cut in. I do think it's important to know. I don't think that everyone understands that there's only a certain amount of international players you can have on a team.
Yeah.
So on an NWSL roster, I believe the number is 7.
Yep.
And so that being said, it's very, very, very rare for a NWSL team to use an international slot on a rookie draft pick.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why you had that presumption in your brain, because it's a very big rarity for an international person to also be a draft.
Yes. I feel like there's also the point where it's easier to take the risk on a rookie who's a forward and an international than a defender and an international, because at least to them, you're scoring goals.
Mm-hmm.
They don't see stopping goals as also a benefit, but whatever.
I think in general, the draft, like, looking at, like, the stats of the draft in general, it is a lot more favorable as a forward than as a defender.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not sure exactly how it works, but there is benefits to still entering the draft, even if you're under the impression you're not going to get drafted, because that allows you the ability to then play in the NWSL after a certain amount of years, like re-enter. Because if you don't enter the draft, then you're not allowed to go back to the States within, like, 5 years of playing or something.
Like 1 year.
Yeah.
So it's not 5, it's 1. So if you didn't enter the draft, you are not allowed to play in the NWSL for 1 year.
Yeah.
That being said, there also is so many other perks of keeping your name in the draft versus just the visibility, going to camp as an NRI and all these different things.
Yeah. So I was invited invited into camp for the Washington Spirit, and I got to train with them, which was an amazing experience. Despite the short period of time, I grew a lot, which I was extraordinarily grateful for. And because of that, I actually ended up meeting Sam and I's mutual agent because he reached out to me shortly before I ended up going to Washington Spirit. So I was talking to him, Gabriel. I was talking to Gabriel a little bit before that. And then I got to see him in person before we went to camp at IMG. And then from there, I found out at IMG that I wouldn't be receiving a contract from the Spirit, and I needed to figure out my next steps. And obviously, as an international, it's more beneficial for me to have an agent because I know that I'm more likely to be traveling abroad than not. So I really like Gabriel. I reached out to him. I was basically like, hey, can you help me out here? Because I'm running out of time. The international window is closing. And do you have anything for me? So, lucky enough, Sam here just moved her butt to Sweden. So, if it actually wasn't for Sam, I don't think I'd be here at all. So,
Once again, she's stuck with me.
but yeah, because he found this opportunity for Sam, IFK, I ended up also getting the opportunity to meet with our coach, Torane. I actually found out, he told me Monday that there was an opportunity to have an interview. I met with Torane Tuesday morning. Wednesday, I get the message saying, okay, you have to make a decision. You have to make a decision. Like, for the next 5 hours. I'm like, great. And then, yeah, that was basically it. And then I was in Florida trying to make a decision to move, not even all of my stuff, like just the little stuff that I had in Washington, from Florida to Washington, all the way to Sweden. Yeah. It was like a 4-day decision, 2-day decision, 4-day interaction. Yeah.
Wow. That is absolutely insane. So were you were always open to going abroad then? Like you wanted to you weren't stuck in the States or doing anything like that or wanting to go back to Canada, or you were always open, I guess, to traveling?
Yeah, always open to traveling. Mainly because I have so many friends, like a lot of players that I grew up playing with have moved here, like here as in Europe here. Like I know I'm friends with another girl who's playing actually in this league. I can't remember what team she's on right now. Another friend I have a bunch of friends who are playing in Denmark, one who's actually playing in Norway, and lots of friends who are playing in France. I know one girl who's playing in Italy. So there's a lot of Canadians spread out all over the place, especially in Europe. So I knew it was always an option, always something to look forward to. If I could stay in the NWSL, yeah, sure, it's great because I'm closer to home. My parents don't have to book a $2,000 flight to come see me. But, you know, it is what it is. It's part of the sport. So
Yeah. The other thing that's coming around is that USL Super League. Was that ever something you looked into doing?
not really, not in depth, mainly because it's just starting. And I feel like while other teams really might have all their stuff together, all their stuff really well organized, I feel like other teams don't. And I would rather not be a part of the learning pains process. I mean, obviously there's opportunities that are going to be there in the USL, but I do live in Europe or live in the US for a year. I think I spent my time in the US. I'm sorry. I could leave. So
You've now been a professional soccer player for what month is it even? This is literally insane. Period of time.
yeah.
In 2024. What would you say the biggest difference from college soccer to professional soccer is?
Biggest difference I'd probably say is this is all you're doing, basically. I not to make it sound like anything less than what it is, but you're basically now dedicating all your time to being the best version of yourself so that you can perform at the highest level you possibly can. Like, I don't think I can afford to function off of 6 hours of sleep and then go show up at training and then go to class. Like, I would do that shit all the time in college. Did it very often, just staying up, doing readings and homework and all that stuff. And I'm so glad I don't have to do that anymore. I'm so glad I don't have a 10-page essay looming over my head. Like, the lack of stress that you have outside of
No, it's so true.
it's so nice.
And it's
so
interesting because I
nice.
still feel like we have moments where like we're at the facility all the time. Like we are working. Like I feel like people are like, oh, you just go to training and that's it. Like there is a lot more detailed in things. Like even and like there's just aspects of your life that you can focus on more. But no, I mean, we were in the facility, like, even with a nutritionist today, and, like, they had us log our food for 5 days, and apparently I extremely undereat, I've learned, but, like, I've never thought about it, like, I'm like, oh, yeah, 3 days a meal, like, 3 meals a day, and yeah, but she's like, no, you need, like, sufficiently more, and in the weight room more, watching film more, and all those things, so it's like, you definitely find times to fill your day, but it's not the pressure of, like, oh, shoot, I have a test later.
Yeah, and that's very, very nice. I can like read my book and I like to read, you know, I get to relax.
Yeah, I just can't relate in the slightest.
How's that mechanical engineering degree going?
Oh my gosh.
It is hell on earth every single day. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone looking to compete at this level. It's just too much. It's too much. I cannot wait for the day where I can just not have an exam. Just one day, no exam. That's all I want. But your guys' life sounds great. I'm so happy for you guys.
I doesn't recommend.
10 out of 10 recommend.
So I know you guys have only been there for a little bit, but can you walk us through kind of the day in a life of a pro athlete?
You should go first.
Me?
Yeah.
Girl, you're the guest. They hear my voice all the time. It varies by the day for us. In a lot of scenarios, like our schedule on Monday is different than our schedule on Tuesday, but I would say like our most interesting days would be like our Tuesdays, for example. So like I wake up around 7 and she lives 20 minutes away from the stadium. You can see the stadium from my window, so I have a bit of an advantage there. And we have team breakfast at 7:45. Once that's kind of due, activation, a little bit of a team meeting before training around 9. And then after training, change, chill for a little bit, go eat lunch. And then we'll have meetings. Like we've had meetings with the nutritionist, our sports psychologist, meetings with the coaches, watching film, positional group meetings, a bunch of just different stuff might be in that chunk of time then. I had an adventure in a Swedish hospital earlier this week because I had to get blood work done. So nothing extreme, but man, that was humbling. And then like from there, then we lift around like 1:32. We'll do a team lift in our gym in our facility and then kind of get home around 3 and then the rest of the day. So I think that's the best part is like when you're at the facility, like your brain can be at the facility, but when you're home, like you're just home.
Yeah, you're home. Completely unplug, relax. Yes. Not okay. Now I need to finish this essay. So bad.
No, that's the biggest difference. It's like I get to like put on my Netflix and like chill for the day.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, that's the biggest difference.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Very, very nice. So as you go through this process, what's the biggest takeaway or any sort of advice you'd have to a younger girl who kind of wants to follow your path? Go pro.
The other thing I'd say is like keep your options open, like keep an open mind. I feel like you'll never know what's gonna come up. Like literally, you'll never know what's gonna come up. And I don't know. I'd say if you can utilize your network as much as you possibly can, like do stay in touch with people who are going to play pro, who are going overseas, or just doing different things just to give you a perspective because like basically me keeping my network like basically allowed me to figure out more what it's like living here in Sweden, overseas, playing pro. But yeah, that's definitely my takeaway.
For sure. If you would have like seen me sitting on this couch in Sweden like 5 years ago, like do you think 5 years ago you would have ever believed like that you ended up here, or like what do you think that journey like you could look back on?
I think 5 years ago, like post,
So that'd be like going into your freshman
yeah,
year of
going to
college.
my freshman year of college, I don't think, like, I'd say, like, yes, I would have been able to see that. If you'd asked me 3 years ago if I saw that, no,
What changed?
absolutely not. Definitely getting injured was a huge blow to my confidence. And then, like, playing for my coach, playing in a new formation, like, there's a bunch of other things that happened in my collegiate career that basically kind of changed the way I had to play, changed, like, my own playing style a little bit. And that was definitely hard to adjust to, especially when you go from playing to get better, playing to develop, to playing strictly for winning. And I think going from high school to university, that was a huge like mental change.
Yeah.
Where literally winning means everything. And not saying like in other places, like winning doesn't mean everything. It does, but it's just not, you don't feel that same level of psychological pressure in order to win, in order to make sure that you can like stop balls and score goals and things like that. Like I'd say that pressure shift is really different because they they put that pressure on you for an entire like for 4 months straight, and you don't feel like you're getting any air. And then as soon as it's over, like, okay, now you get to like decompress a little bit. While here, I feel like it's already an anticipated environment, like mentally. So you already know that, yeah, you are competing to win each week, but you're also not playing 2 games a week. Yeah, playing Thursday and then playing Sunday. Like,
Yeah.
that's just, I don't know how we did that.
I'm so thankful I don't have to do that anymore.
Really don't know how we did that. That feels ridiculous. Or even in, I think in the Super League, if you're in the Super League and you're like in Champions League at the same time too, you're playing like 3 games a week.
Yeah.
I don't know how people do that. But outside of that, like, you kind of know, like, yeah, like you're here to compete, you are here to do that, but this is what you're here for. You're not here to do much else, you know. You're here to have fun and enjoy the sport that you've been playing since you were a little kid. Your jersey was too big and it was down to your knees, and your shin guards were taken up from your entire shin, and you were kicking the ball with your shin instead of your foot. Yeah.
No.
I feel like that's how it goes at every level you change though, where it's like looking back at high school, I'm like, how in the world did I wake up at 7:25, go to school all day, go to practice, then go to club, and then get back, do homework? Like, I'm like, I couldn't do that now. And then like at every level, I feel like you achieve, you're like, how did we do that then? Because the older you get, the more I'm like, I need naps, I need more rest, I need less. But touching a little bit on, because I think we'll talk about this later, because right now I'm currently injured. And it's one of the questions I feel like I get the most is how do you deal with an injury? How do you deal with that mental kind of turmoil you have to go through to get back and all that?
It's like, do you want the answer that you want us to tell other people, or what we actually know for ourselves? Because
Well, we actually know.
these are two different things.
I agree.
Maya, we're getting the real here. We're getting the real.
Different things. Because, I mean, obviously, once you get injured, and depending on the type of injury it is too, it kind of really messes with your head. And I'd say, like, one thing that's really huge is if you can let your coach know that, like, to keep checking up on you, if you're comfortable with that relationship, to keep checking up on you so you don't feel like you've just been discarded. Because I feel like depending on your coach, you kind of feel like you're not on the team anymore. So, and that's like, with that being such a huge part of your life, like, that's incredibly massive. Like, you can't afford to not be feeling that way. Like, I've seen teammates who basically go through like really, really bad times because that's exactly how the way they felt. Like, they basically didn't care anymore. And that's like the hardest thing I'd say, like, as a teammate, is to see someone like basically lose their ability to care not only for the team, but almost for the sport itself because of how hard the injury is on them. I'm not going to tell you, stay positive. It's going to be okay. No, it sucks. It sucks. It's terrible. Speaking from someone like who was out for 6 months last year, like, yeah, it's really hard to stay checked in, like stay like present and in the moment while you're watching your teammates. But for me, I took ended up taking more of like a coaching role. That's like, so that ended up helping my game a little bit more, just talking to players and telling them like, yeah, this is what you can do better. Like, I see you doing this, you're struggling. That's fine. But this is also an option. This is what you can do. But I'd say as an injured athlete, like, don't forget the other things that make you happy too. Like, make sure you get to spend the time. Like, if you like going to the movies with your friends, make sure you like schedule that time in and make sure you do that, because that's more important, so that when you do get back on the field, you're at a happier state overall and you're not just like, okay, finally I'm back on the field, but I'm still miserable as a person. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the truth of it. And the other thing I think people get wrong about injuries is they feel like you have more free time now because you're not playing. No, like you still have to go to lifts and trainings, even if you're not competing. Then you have to do additional rehab. And then once you can do actually like running or anything else, you're adding that in on top of everything. You have to like, it's so much more time consuming. And people are like, oh, like you have all this free time now. You're not playing. Like, no, I still have to go to everything plus more.
It's like, no, it's worse.
It is way worse.
Like, I'm getting there before everyone and leaving last. Like, no.
Well, even in Jordyn's case, I'm sure as many, like, you also can't really walk there on your own. So you're relying on rides and friends and roommates for rides and teammates. And so it's like, hey, can you take me to this doctor's appointment? Can you take me here? Like, that has to be like the extra burden of that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because I can't drive myself too, it's like, you're there, but then I'm also like waiting around for people to finish their classes and their things to take me. So it's like these weird gaps where normally I could go home or do different things. Like I'm just staying at the facilities because like I'm not walking home. Like I can't. So it's like these weird time consuming just scenarios that you're in that people, I think, just a huge misconception around injury is that it's more freeing, and it's just not.
I think Jordyn really wanted to get something off her chest there.
It did. It's so annoying. It's like my own father too, and my parents are like, "Oh, like what are you doing with all this free time?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
There is no free time. There's no free time. There's no free time.
Yeah.
And because I was injured during like my last semester, like before graduation, like it just felt worse because I was exhausted because I'll try to get my fitness up so that when I got back to running, it wouldn't be as bad. So what I'd be doing, I'd get in the pool and swim in the pool instead of running. So I'd be in the pool in the morning and then go watch practice, lift with the team, like do my own lift with the team, and then go to class. And then in class, I'm like physically exhausted because not only have to deal with the fact that like I can't walk properly, like I'm walking in a boot or I'm taking my scooter around. Like it was just so mentally draining overall as a whole, like not even losing the time. Like you are constantly mentally exhausted. Yeah. It's tough. It's just not easy to deal with.
Oh my gosh. Jordyn, you got anything else?
No, I think you covered it.
Well, Maya, I honestly think this is one of my favorite interviews. Thank you so much for being so real. Telling us honestly the reality of it. Because like I haven't even thought about like an international going to college and the differences in life. Yeah. And then doing it again. So here we are. I'm so happy you're stuck with me in Sweden. I don't know if you're as happy about it that I am, but it's fine. I'll grow on you.
If it makes you feel any better, I'm very rarely excited about anything. So I am happy to be here with you, but while your energy may be up here, I am definitely.
No one can match Sam Carey's energy. I have learned that. She is on a whole different planet with that.
Yeah. But enough energy for both me and you.
It's all right. It's all right. You should have seen us in the hotel. You guys the roommate dynamics and everything. We're like polar opposite on absolutely everything, and it was incredible.
Not everything, just most things.
Just most things. I like to be about 30 minutes early to everything. She's like right on time. Not late, but right on time.
Yeah.
I'm like blast music, Taylor Swift, like let's go. She's like singing her Adele, turning tables, sad songs in the shower. I'm like early to bed. She's chilling up a little bit later. We had our vibes going.
Yeah, we did.
I feel like we'd be more similar. We're more on the same level than you, Sam.
I see it. Just come to Sweden and come hang out. It's simple.
All right, I'll book at the flight. Say
Do it,
less.
Maddie.
That's true.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for coming on. You've been an absolute legend. I'll let you walk home now. I kidnapped her to be here.
No, you're right. That Watkins. It's fine. It's not raining anymore. It'll be fine.
Valid. Sun came out in Sweden.
Yes, the sun came out.
All right, Maya, thank you again so much for coming on. I really hope people got what I got out of that. Like, I had a blast. She's an amazing human being, an incredible soccer player. But honestly, I'm just so glad she was willing to come on here and talk a bit about that journey. You know, I've never really thought about an internationalist perspective of going to college and how their system's so different in Canada, even though it feels like, oh, yeah, it's just Canada. It's not that far away. And that transition period of transitioning from being Canadian to the U.S. So thankful for Maya for sharing her experience, and I hope it helps some people out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it was one of my favorite, if not my favorite interview we've done thus far. And I highly recommend everyone go ahead and give it a listen because it was a perfect balance between super knowledgeable on what she was talking about and funny. And I can't get over how she called her ankle a loaf of bread. So that was my favorite part.
It's the new thing. Season 2's going strong already. Let's go, guys. All right, Jordyn. I have recently found out that Jordyn has been basically sleuthing, and a ton of people has been asking her questions. And the Ask Me Jordyn area is hitting up. So once again, listeners, our DMs are always open for questions. Girls Soccer Network's DMs are open for questions. Any way you can contact us with all this link is always in our podcast notes. Please do if you have questions for the pod. So, Jordyn, I know you said a lot of them. We're kind of talking about injury and different things like that. What were some of the questions about injury, and what is your response? Is that something you're living through right now?
Yeah. One of the questions I got a lot was dealing with injury. It is a huge part of the game, unfortunately, especially with women's soccer. I think we are one of the highest injury sports that you see in terms of, especially with your knees. And it's an unfortunate part of the game that you deal with at all levels. You know, there's obviously varying levels of injury from soft tissue to ankle injuries to knee injuries where you're out for weeks compared to months and all of that. But no matter, I think the timeline of it, being injured is hard. You know, and you heard it in the interview, it is just incredibly difficult. And I think for me, and I can only speak to my experience because that's all I know, I was injured and we talked a bit about it coming into my junior year and the difficulties surrounding that injury where I was out for 3 months with an ankle injury. And that was hard because I couldn't train, I couldn't practice, I wasn't cleared until the first day of season. But I wasn't missing anything with my team. It was individual development time in the summer that I was missing and preseason, right? And then I was cleared and it was working my way back into things. And I think I struggled with confidence that took a huge hit because I didn't feel like I was prepared for season. I wasn't fit enough. I wasn't technical enough or tactical enough because I hadn't been training. I just wasn't prepared or confident with my ability to perform. And I think it strongly impacted my junior year. I wasn't happy with my performance on the field. And I think a large part of that was because of that. I think with this injury that I'm dealing with now, which is a torn PCL, it's harder because of the timeline, along with the fact that I'm sitting here watching my teammates train. I'm sitting here watching my coaching staff coach, and I don't get to be a part of that. And I think what Maya said was like, you don't really feel like you're a part of the team. And for me, I loved high school so much. I loved it. And the biggest lesson I learned from it was how quickly it goes. This impending feeling of almost doom where like you're waiting for the clock to end because you know how much it's going to hurt. And I knew how much it hurt saying goodbye to high school. But for high school, there was a very clear path for me. There's a story already written. And while, the pages weren't filled, the title was there. I was going to Michigan State. I was going to play soccer. I was going to get a degree. College is a completely unique experience to high school. It's almost uncomparable. You do so much growing and you're independent, but you're not an adult yet. It's very different. but in a lot of ways, it's still the same. Whereas post college, it's just the rest of life. There's no defined path that you kind of follow. It's just life. And for me, I was hyper aware of time and how important it was and the moments that once they pass, you can't get them back. This is a lesson I think a lot of people learn too late. And it's something I was always aware of when I got here. And it's been a blessing and a curse. Because I feel like every milestone that I hit as I went throughout my process, it was a countdown. It was 1 out of 7, 2 out of 7, 3 out of 7. Because that's all you get. That's all I get is 7 semesters. I don't have a 5th year. I don't have a COVID year. It's 7 semesters and I'm done. The thing that has defined my life for as long as I have known being an athlete is over. So I think what the struggle is now for me is as I'm sitting here, I'm also watching that clock tick down. I won't be cleared until probably end of May. Hopefully I'll be fully cleared. But then I'm still gonna have to get back into things and all that. So I'm looking at June, July, August, September, October, and November. And November's not even guaranteed. That's if you're lucky, which is 6 months. And that's 6 months until I have to figure out the rest of my life. 6 months until the thing that has defined me, being an athlete, will be over. And I think that's the hardest part for me right now, is just like watching the clock tick down. And I wish I had more advice for people about it. But I think if I were to say anything, it's been leaning on my other teammates who are injured, knowing that I'm not alone in this, being able to relate to them on that level, because it is super unique. And I think it's just this constant battle with your mind where I want to be great. I want to be good. There's things I can do off the field. Like, what can I do? It's not like I can really train. Maybe I can watch film and games and trying to learn. But at the same time, I'm almost convincing myself, or trying to protect myself, I think, that I don't love it as much, because it makes it easier when it goes away. You're like trying to be okay with not playing, right? And you're trying to process that while also still trying to stay in love with the game and do all this stuff and stay motivated to be good, but you're not able to do anything or act on any of those feelings. And it's this really weird kind of yin and yang going on in your head about what you want to do. And I think what I've learned is that you have to stay in it. I think what Maya said about trying to be a coach, watching film, talking to your coaching staff, I think is a huge part of it, because it's hard to keep that connection when you're not playing, because you are a player. You're a soccer player, right? That's why you were recruited here. And when you're not on the field, you feel as if you have no worth. So being able to still provide in different aspects, I think, is huge to keep you motivated and keep you in it. But yeah, I think it's just being injured is incredibly difficult. That's what I've learned from it so far. And, I'm sure hopefully in a couple weeks here, when I can start doing more rehab and doing things like that, my opinions and feelings on it will change. But for right now, hopefully someone's going to take something away from it. It's one, that you're not alone. Everyone gets injured. It happens. And that you can't let that one side win, where you're convincing yourself that it's okay not to play and that you don't love it. And this is all like, it doesn't have as much value as it does, because you're never going to believe yourself, first of all. And second of all, it's only going to hurt you in the end when you can do that rehab and you can start training again. But yeah,
No,
I think it's my takeaway.
I think Maya said it best, in the sense of it sucks. Yeah. And I'm gracious that it's not something I've had to tremendously deal with, knock on some wood. But I think just acknowledging that it sucks. Like, we don't have to be the optimist and it's fine. And oh my God, I'm so happy for the team. Like, you can do that and acknowledge it sucks. And I feel like so much of it is we are very easy to cast aside and be like, oh, like, she's fine. She's being dramatic. It says it's not that bad. It doesn't hurt that bad. Like, okay, I could have toughed through it. Like, it sucks. And I think just like being real and honest and saying that, like, I want to thank you in that, but also like, it sucks. And it's okay to say that. And you're not a bad person. You're not a not tough person. You're not a not strong person. by saying that this sucks. It's that simple. The one thing, like, I'm going to say to you, Jordyn, I understand we're recording this, but I think this is a really unique thing that we have is that I am a year older than you. And I feel like the same conversation that you're having about, dang, I have 6 months. It's different in a sense of once again, I had no idea my path was by far from written, but I knew where I wanted it to go. I knew what the plot point of book number 2 was going to be in my journey. That being said, like, you don't right now, and that's okay. The number one thing, though, is you can't look and watch that clock time down because time goes so much faster when you're watching it tick down and when you're not living in the moment. And that's like the stupidest and hardest thing to do. And like, I remember my college coach telling me this, and I was like, David, please shut up. Like, you're not helping right now. But if there's one thing I wish I would have known going into my 5th year is the last thing you can think about is December and November. It's all about August 1st or like whatever the day is at that time. And so like your last season is something so special. And it's something like I'm really looking forward to talking about because I think there's so many moments in your last season that affect you in ways that you don't realize or comprehend. You know, one try I'm going to draw is like, I was talking to my mom the other day and like Caitlin Clark, legend, amazing. You know, I'm so lucky to have been at Iowa at the same time that she was. And it was interesting because there's so much correspondence, I feel like, about her early games in the tournament being some of her worst games her senior year. And why was it? I would have to heavily say, and she even kind of acknowledged it in an interview, she didn't have the weight of her last game being in Carver Hawkeye Arena being a loss. And that extra pressure of your last game, your last moment, your last tournament, adding that to your plate, like I can honestly say, man, some of my worst games in my college soccer career, I think my worst game was our first round against NCAA against Bucknell last year because I was so worried about it being my last game at the Iowa soccer field that I didn't play. And so there's a way, or you have to find a way, and this is the challenging part, to separate all those lasts with the reality of it. Because if you don't think it's your last, then you also enjoy the weight of it, but also not letting it weigh you down. And so that'll be the journey that you're on now that I had to deal with. And hopefully I can help you along the way with that.
Yeah, I think that's incredible advice because that's not something I really thought about. Because the number one advice I feel like most people give you is to enjoy it because of how quickly it goes. But I think there is something really important in realizing that you can't add that pressure and it's not the weight of the world on it because then your performance does get hindered. And something I guess I never really thought about. So thank you for that.
Anytime. All right. Hit us with a happy question. What's another question you got hit with that we need to discuss before we wrap this up?
Yeah. Another question I got another question I got asked, there we go, is how accommodating are professors with athletes traveling for games?
Okay. Great question. I think this is blanket statement. This is going to vary by your degree. This is going to vary by your school. This is going to vary by your personality and relationships. Those are the 3 things I think it varies by. Myself, I had a dream scenario. I was at the University of Iowa, which is the epicenter of women's sports, if I'm going to be honest, in this time period right now. I'll call it that. I know many people at Iowa have. It was in a small college, so I wasn't like in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. I was in the College of Public Health. So it was a smaller college. And I was the second student athlete to ever be the major that I was. Because of all of that, professors didn't know how to deal with student athletes, and often that went in my favor. My classes were small enough that I would walk into class and my professor would be like, hey guys, by the way, the Iowa women's soccer team did this last night. I had a professor give extra credit for going to my games. And so the whole class, 150 person class, like was at my game with signs for me. So like incredible experience. I also had professors I had classes that were in person at 8 a.m. and that was during our practice block. But because my major was so small, that was the only time they were offered. They let me take the class completely asynchronously and online to accommodate for that. So I had a dream scenario where everything was able to be accommodated. But I also know that that's not a reality for every single person.
Yeah, I think I had an opposite experience, but quickly follow up to that. Do athletes struggle to keep grades up with team requirements?
Ooh. Once again, I think this just depends on who you are as a person and what you're willing to balance. I see my life, I always have, I think since high school, I called it the 3 S's: school, soccer, social. Those are the 3 prongs of a triangle. And you're never going to have all 3. Like, and at certain periods of life, you're going to have 2 of the 3. over the summer, you don't really need school. That's for social and soccer. That being said, fall is for school and soccer. And sometimes one more than the other. And so it's being able to understand what are you willing to give up? Because you're not going to have the normal college experience. You're not going to have all these things. That being said, you have soccer and you have school. And so when you prioritize it right, I don't think I overly struggled with the balance. That being said, you have to be willing to prioritize it right.
Yeah. Me and you, I think, had very opposite experiences with this. Being an engineer, I struggled a lot with professors accommodating for missed assignments or things of that nature, more so than other majors, and I think more so than other universities as well. I think all of that varies greatly on the major you choose and the school you go to, like you said. Engineering, for me, I found at Michigan State, a lot of times they built into the syllabus that for no matter what reason, if you are missing, you get a 0, whether that be exams sometimes or attendance points, or regardless of what it was, you get a 0. And, I've had it where I normally thrived academically because of things out of my control, where I'm here representing the university. I'm still getting 0s on exams, which, there's been times where, like, completely honestly, I had to retake a course because you get a 0 on a 30% exam. Like, there's only so much you can do to make up for that. Like, it's engineering too. It's not like I'm getting hundreds on everything else. So it's been hard in that aspect. We've had long battles with my academic advisor and some of the professors trying to figure out balances. A lot of times, what we've kind of come to the compromises is I get capped at like 60 to 70% of whatever my exam score is. So if I miss it and take it, I can only get like a 70%, even if I get 100% on the exam. And, that's hard. You take a hit academically there. So yeah, I found that they're a lot less accommodating for me than other majors. I've had people where they'll take online exams or they'll get released late or early, and it's really no issue at all. Like, they are super accommodating. They love their athletes, things of that nature. For me, I think it's just been a bit harder, and that's because of the degree I chose. Do athletes struggle to keep grades up with team requirements? Again, this is largely dependent on your major. I'll speak to engineering because, like I said, that's all I know. I've seen a lot of my teammates thrive. We have a high GPA, I think, overall. Like, yes, you struggle, but you have to be super disciplined with it. And I think there's a lesson in that, just being super time focused, time management. If you're disciplined in your academics, a lot of times it translates to the field where you are able to be more disciplined as a player. With engineering, there's only a handful of us that I've seen. I've found that it's very hard and very rare. I haven't really seen someone thrive at both academics and athletics. Usually one of them suffers. And it will switch. Sometimes you'll be great academically, but not thriving athletically, and vice versa. The other thing I found is that it depends on sport. Like with soccer, you can't go and train on your own if you have a class at that time or a conflict. Like, you have to go to training. It's a team sport. But my roommate, she's on gymnastics and she's also a mechanical engineer. She makes up a lot of her trainings with just her coaching staff. Like, you can do gymnastics on your own, which I thought is super unique, and not as much with soccer. So personally, yeah, I think you struggle with that aspect, and you have to be hyper aware of that when you're picking a major and deciding on competition level of soccer. Like, how high of a level do you want to compete at? And if you want to compete at the highest level, I would recommend either picking a major that isn't going to be a full-time job on top of it, or extending your degree to the point where you'll have extra time to make up some of those harder classes. The other thing I would recommend that I wish I knew when I was younger is, once you commit, go on your school's website, your transfer portal, see what credits transfer in, and take some like community college classes before you go in that summer, or look at them, take some AP classes, whatever your university offers that will transfer in, and you can get ahead of your degree, which will make it a billion times easier once you get here to manage those expectations. But yeah, that's what I advise.
All right. Well, I've talked enough about school, and I am not a college athlete anymore. Sorry, bud, that I'm exhausted from hearing you talk. So For those who tuned in, thank you so much. Once again, we're always here for questions. We want to keep answering them. We want to be honest and real and raw about our experiences. Thank you again to Maya for being an incredible, incredible guest. And thank you for tuning in to The Big Life.
Bye, guys.